Alright, so Lyle McDonald has surfaced again recently and is honestly going on a bit of a generational content run with Solomon Nelson acting as his co-host. The videos have been a wild mix of 3-hour plus deep dives into Lyle McDonald's nutrition protocols and probably closing in now on at least 10 hours of content just critiquing Mike Israetel, which has been entertaining and I've agreed with some of it, but a lot of it has sort of felt like a bit of a hypocritical pile-on at times. And then this really strange, seemingly out of left field critique of CrossFit. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not uncommon for bodybuilders or even the fitness industry as a whole to take shots at CrossFit, but watching this video felt like stepping into a time machine and getting transported back to 2014 and listening to some random NPC Redditor talk about CrossFit.
CrossFit.
Now, CrossFit is objectively stupid.
Coming out of the gates in true Lyle McDonald fashion.
And I used to see people talk about CrossFit was the exercise of the privileged because it was like $40 a class.
I mean, it's not reformer Pilates. You don't have to sign up to a CrossFit box and hire a CrossFit coach. You can just have a regular gym membership.
And I literally saw people crowing online about how they would never join a commercial gym that was only $40 a month.
So many fitness niches, it's not uncommon these days for people to go to a gym that's specific to their needs. This has always been common with things like yoga or Pilates, but then we even have specific gyms for not only CrossFit, but also powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, and definitely there are bodybuilding gyms. I'm sure if you went to a bunch of people in a hardcore bodybuilding gym and asked them if they go to a regular commercial gym, they'd laugh you out of the room as well.
Please explain, why is CrossFit objectively stupid?
Number one, random training gets random results.
In what way is the training random for those who might not know?
So back in the day, basically you went to the CrossFit website and they would just put up a workout of just random bullshit, whatever the workout of the day was. It was the WOD, the workout of the day.
So this is a really accurate summary of how people used to train CrossFit about 14 years ago. And again, I'd say that this is just a better example of how CrossFit actually made a genuine effort to make things accessible. Yes, you can talk about all these expensive CrossFit boxes and coaching and classes, but here they are giving away workout inspiration for CrossFitters who don't want to spend the money on that.
And that's just what you did. There was
a couple AMRAP cleans, go for a jog.
Sure, for 400 meters and do 20 box jumps and then do some kipping chins. And the next day you would do something totally unrelated. There's no consistency of training in terms of actually like making progress other than in being tired and then getting injured.
This is insane. CrossFitters are obsessed with measurable results. It's the only thing that they care about. That's a big reason why so many people get attracted to CrossFit in the first place. There's so many different areas where you can just see measurable improvement.
Now, it did evolve down the road, and they started doing things like, okay, we're going to use real strength training, like actual proper, like not cleans to failure, not AMRAP squats, and then we're going to do all the metabolic work with safer stuff. You did start to see that happen. Absolutely, you'll get no argument from me on that. But that was not the majority of boxes.
And he's probably right here, like the average CrossFit box, even these days, might be a little bit of a mess. But let's look at how the average bodybuilder trains. 3 sets of 10s till mild discomfort, and then just sit there doom scrolling on TikTok, drink a protein shake and go home. Yeah, I love bodybuilders, I don't have a problem with bodybuilding, but if we're talking about averages for CrossFit and bodybuilding, it's just not good.
CrossFit also didn't scale. Whether you were beginner or elite, you got the same workout.
This is complete nonsense. I've seen it in real life. Good CrossFit boxers know how to scale better than personal trainers. And part of the reason for this is some of the technical exercises that they push CrossFitters to learn. If you're going to get Susan from accounting to snatch her body weight and do a muscle up, you better understand your regressions and progressions.
People got injured, and then when people start getting hurt,
So you know how I was saying there's a lot of commonalities between the average bodybuilder and the average CrossFitter? You know what one of the differences is? The average CrossFitter trains so much harder. And when you expose more people to harder training, you're just going to get more injuries. That's the way it is.
Started getting rhabdomyolysis, and there was a bunch of them. They fucking embraced it. They were like, if you're not
they're like, whoa, I got rhabdomyolysis.
Like,
I'm so hardcore.
They're referencing stories about CrossFit that are over 10 years old at this point.
At the CrossFit Games one year, there were 26 pec tears.
I I don't want to sit here and stick up for every event that CrossFit HQ has programmed for their games or even their regionals, because there's been some absolute doozies. I mean, there was a death at the CrossFit Games last year due to poor programming and safety concerns. So,
well, there was a death at the CrossFit Games last year. Someone died because the water they were swimming was too hot.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, back to deaths. How many deaths has there been in bodybuilding? I mean, we've lost track really at this point.
Why do you think it's so injurious?
Well, go watch it. It's all just sheer momentum jerking on the connective tissue. You're not even using muscular activity. It's all body momentum.
I would have thought Lyle would know this with his vast education and experience, but your muscles don't just magically turn off as soon as you're moving at a higher velocity than a 4010 tempo. Usain Bolt didn't use his muscles to run 958. It was all body momentum. He should have been there squeezing his glutes one at a time to get down the track. Then it really would have counted.
But they would have them doing stuff like very technical movements, like barbell snatches for high reps to failure.
So snatches and clean and jerks are more technical than bicep curls, but it's also not like teaching someone a golf swing or something.
These are highly technical lifts.
Yes.
That athletes spend their entire lives perfecting.
You just jump and shrug. Ah, the lifts are highly technical. Wieners.
Right, and Olympic lifters don't do more than like 3 for a reason.
Yeah, the reason they don't do more than 3 is because they compete in a sport of only doing 1 rep. If they needed to do more reps as part of their competition, like a CrossFitter, they would practice more reps. Specificity.
According to people on the internet, CrossFitters are jacked. Do you hear that from time to... It's this whole thing. Why are CrossFitters so jacked? It can't be anabolic androgenic steroids, can it?
I think people exaggerate the role that steroids play in CrossFit as being so jacked. I'm sure a bunch of guys at the top level are pumping heaps of gear, but I've personally witnessed a bunch of amazing natural CrossFit physique transformations.
Now, I've heard some people say it's the volume. The volume makes them jacked.
The people who were winning the CrossFit Games, they didn't train CrossFit. They trained very traditionally in the off season.
This is such an insane argument, and again, it just proves that Lyle doesn't know shit about sport, because it's very common in sports for training and competition to look distinctively different. Bodybuilding competition looks pretty different from the training, doesn't it? But if you only did the competition events in bodybuilding and you only did the competition events in CrossFit, I know which one would lead to better training outcomes. And soccer players don't just play games of soccer, they have training. Basketball and football, they're sports. Again, they're training in their games. There's overlap, but again, pretty distinctively different a lot of the time. Anyway, this is just what happens when bodybuilders talk about sports.
Because you've seen the CrossFit women, right? 6 packs, cap delts, huge traps, right? Friend argued that CrossFit was ideal for muscle growth for women.
So it's not ideal. However, a lot of the CrossFit stuff, especially early on, you use fixed weights. So you do like 95 pounds, cleans, but men and women did the same thing. Some of those weights would have been training weights for women. The
reason why top female CrossFitters are so jacked is because you actually need to have a lot of muscle to be a competitive CrossFitter. You do not need much muscle to be a successful female physique competitor. I honestly doubt that there's many female physique competitors, especially in those smaller divisions, that'd even have a shot at getting through a CrossFit competition. You actually need muscle mass to do muscle ups or squat double your body weight. I think one of the things that CrossFit did is it encouraged a lot of women to train really hard and not worry about putting on a whole bunch of muscle. In a lot of female physique divisions, they're actively discouraged from building muscle in certain places or going over a certain amount of muscle mass. There's none of that in CrossFit. So when you increase participation and you train really hard, yeah, you get a bunch of jacked women. It's sick.
Rich Froning, who was held up as the CrossFit god, at his peak was 240 pounds.
I believe that's a 40-pound exaggeration. Lyle would crucify people for being this out of pocket. Rich didn't even compete at 200 pounds. That was sort of an off-season weight for him. I'm pretty sure he was competing at about 185 pounds.
Arnold only competed at 220. So what these people are trying to say is that Rich Froning, from CrossFit alone, was 20 pounds heavier than Arnold at his peak.
If we just have a look at them side by side, yeah, there's just no comparison.
Yeah, CrossFit has a known steroid culture.
Oh, we can't get hung up about steroids in CrossFit, especially bodybuilders talking. Like, I think it's completely valid to criticize the concept of unfair sport and cheating, but this is a thing that's just in all sports.
They use the same approach that they do in the military and things like that. We're not just a bunch of people working out. We're a cult. I mean, we're a family. But it was literally a cult, because it was just like, CrossFit is the only way anyone should train, and anyone who's not CrossFit is us against them.
The idea that CrossFit is a cult is a little bit outdated as well. It's a pretty big part of CrossFit culture these days to criticize CrossFit HQ. Most of the memes that you see made about CrossFit today are made by CrossFitters themselves. Also, any fitness method has its religious zealots. Even within bodybuilding, there are several distinct denominations that are going to war with each other and anyone who trains differently all the time. You've got the low volume or high intensity training crowd versus the high volume people. You've got the bulking and cutting crowd versus the main gainers. And then you've got the science base versus the bros. And every single one of them will go to war for their cause. Still to this day, you see it online in comment sections all the time. Even Lyle has his zealot followers. I think all of us as content creators should have some self-awareness. At a certain point, you're just dealing with a certain sample of the population and you're gonna have some crazies.
There was a famous girl in the 2000s, I forget her name, who literally said, "I will only date a man who does CrossFit." That's a cult.
I mean, I think we've all had our heart broken by a CrossFit chick at one point in our life. And I completely understand wanting to date someone who has a really common interest with you. It's also like when you think about like a CrossFit dude, it's pretty attractive, pretty good figure, in pretty good shape, they got skills, they can perform for more than 2 minutes without getting out of breath. I mean, you can see what they're into.
CrossFit exploited what I feel is part of humans' need to join a group.
Yeah, the same way my mate exploits me and gets me to go surfing with him on the weekends. Oh no, I've joined a cult. Yeah, I just don't understand this commentary. It's not specific to CrossFit at all. It's just as prominent in bodybuilding. Anyway, hopefully Lyle or Solomon sees this, and it'll be interesting to see how they take the criticism. I'm still a fan of both of them and the content. I just thought this one was a little bit out of pocket. Let me know what you think in the comments.